Heads up, this episode of Schmeitgeist contains some explicit language.
This is an ABC podcast.
If I tell you to think of a bimbo right now, you're going to have a pretty clear picture in your head.
That's hot.
Uncomfortable though that may be. Go on, bench your inner second-wave feminist, assuming you have one, for like 15 seconds, and imagine a fictional yet highly specific bimbo. And just like magic, we're all thinking of roughly the same person. To start with, she's a woman, and oh, she's smiling. No, giggling. At what? You'll never know. Like a blonde Mona Lisa, with pigtails. I'm also seeing a tiny, tiny top and a matching miniskirt, high heels, detailed girly makeup. I can't even count how many diamantes. There's a fluffy pen, a tiny handbag, and even tinier dog. And is that a necklace with her name on it? Duh, of course it is. I know you see her too. Don't feel bad about it though. You didn't invent her. Society did. She lives rent-free in the collective imagination because this is the canonical bimbo. But there's a twist, because in 2023, when a bimbo opens her mouth to speak, she doesn't say quite what you expect her to.
Are you a hyper-feminine woman? Are you really hot? Do you not care about society's elitist view on academic intelligence? I'm no doctor, but I think you may be a new age bimbo.
No thoughts, just vibes.
Being a bimbo isn't just about being hot and your great tits. And they're great, by the way. Because in sweats or a miniskirt, you deserve to be respected.
When people ask you for your opinion on hot topics, just act like you've never heard of that before.
You don't have to know what an ounce is. Guess what? You don't have to know who John Lennon is, okay? That sounds old and weird.
What is a presidential election?
Oopsies. Who am I protecting? The girlies, the gays, all of my babes, okay? Like the United States of this pussy.
I'm Angela Papierre, and this is Schmeitgeist, the podcast from ABC Everyday that decodes the biggest and weirdest trends in pop culture, coming to you from Gadigal land. And for our first episode of season 2, we are talking about bimbos and something we're calling bimbo feminism. How it went from being a TikTok subculture to a mainstream cultural force that's changing what the word means to people.
It's this very capitalistic figure when you first look at it. It's, like logomania and glitter and highlights, but it's someone who's adopting that costume to say things that are anti-capitalistic and left-wing and feminist.
We find out what it's like to play the bimbo.
Someone's going to call you a slut or a whore or whatever as a woman, whatever you do. It doesn't matter if you wear a t-shirt or you wear a crop top or you wear a bra or you don't wear a bra. It's like, we can't win, so you may as well own it.
And ask, can the bimbo, a rebooted sexist trope and a word that's been used to hold women down for decades, be flipped to fight sexism?
A lot of people are like, I know a girl that's just like that. And I'm like, you're missing the point. I'm making fun of how you see women. I'm not making fun of women.
Okay, what is, and there are no wrong answers here, what is a bimbo to you?
Maybe dyed hair, surgically enhanced. Sure. Maybe someone who's not switched on.
So I have to say, asking strangers this question is way more uncomfortable than you think. Mainly, people are desperate to not sound sexist.
What does it mean to you? Why, ooh?
Well, it definitely has negative connotations attached to it.
I don't really have a definition of it anymore in my head. It's not a good thing.
Am I imagining a gender or am I imagining a person? I hate to say it, but I'm going with the female gender, and I feel terrible that bias has come up in my mind.
I do, however, find one guy who is still using it as a slur.
Someone with not much intelligence.
Is it it's a woman, right?
Well, I was going to say my ex.
Your ex?
Oh.
But overall, there's a lot of pro-bimbo sentiment out there.
Do you know what? Sometimes it's fun to be a little goofy. It's fun to be, not having to prove yourself all the time. So I get that. Well, it's like, I think I've seen people like reclaim it in a sense, and then they're just like, I'm bimbo, and they're proud of that. It's like it's even just being feminine or being like anything. It's just, you can reclaim it as what you want. Yeah. And that's working. Yeah, 100%.
I don't know, freedom to be, I guess, kind of stupid, but like in a self-aware way.
The word bimbo doesn't mean exactly what it used to, and it's still changing. And the reason I wanted to start the new season of Schmeitgeist here with bimbos is that they've become a kind of proxy war between the old internet, the internet of the last decade or so, and what's replacing it. So what better way to begin than by subjecting ourselves to the cultural, generational Rorschach test that is bimbo talk.
A day in the life of a Gen Z bimbo. She begins her day by doing her makeup and then taking a quick detour to write down all the men who wronged her and setting it on fire, and then restarting her makeup again.
So my name is Roisin Lanigan. I work at ID magazine. I'm an editor there. I write and commission a lot around internet culture and like modern culture, which I guess is where this bimbo article came from.
So Roisin Lanigan has been tracking this since the tail end of the most intense lockdowns.
So the bimbo trend, it kind of emerged out of the pandemic. Essentially, I think a reaction to that and young women feeling really burnt out, and also just sort of realising that centering their lives around work wasn't necessarily working for them. And so it was a reclamation of the traditional bimbo that we would have seen in modern culture. So young women, usually on an app like TikTok, using bimbo as a term for basically being like a byword for like dropping out of hustle culture.
I just don't really want to do work, and I want to release myself of the shackles of self-awareness.
I studied the discipline of bimbology at Hot and Dumb University, making me kind of smart.
Rule number 8 is purposely do things you don't want to do wrong so you don't have to do them, especially simple tasks. So if you don't want to do the dishes and someone asks you, like, just don't even use soap. They'll never ask you to do it again.
And also kind of reclaiming unapologetic femininity. So I think that like I'm a millennial, and when I was growing up, you wouldn't have wanted to be seen as really ultra feminine. It wasn't like cool to be that way. Like even like Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. If you were someone who saw yourself as a teenager where you were like, I'm not like other girls, or you thought that you were intellectual, you thought that you were like cool, you wouldn't have wanted to have that. And I think it was young women realizing that there's nothing really wrong with being like other women. So it kind of came out of that, really.
So like most trends, the bimbo trend starts out as a reaction. A reaction against the pandemic, yes, but more broadly against the productivity-obsessed, millennial-driven hustle culture of the 2010s. Also known as girl boss culture. Whereas the bimbo way is the total opposite. It's being strategically and pointedly smooth-brained.
When you act a little slow, people take it a little easier on you.
And as Roisin said, bimboism is also a pushback against a millennial stigma attached to hyper-femininity. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about here, you should go back and check out that song Stupid Girls by Pink. Or rewatch Mean Girls.
You can't sit with us!
And we're generalizing, obviously, because like any TikTok trend, it's grassroots. It's not uniform. Some of the accounts are 100% about body and sex positivity for women. Some are more geared towards the male gaze, but with the explicit goal of manipulating or trolling men. And sometimes it just feels like apolitical cosplay and an excuse to show off complicated eye makeup. But most of the influential accounts on Bimbo Talk are there to make a point. Some of them have even posted bimbo manifestos.
They were basically posting political theory on the internet, or they were talking about feminism. And so they were using this misogynistic trope to really subvert what was expected of women online and offline.
The term bimbo has become so much broader over time.
I don't do this for the misogynistic male gaze. I do it for my gaze. And damn, my tits look good.
Which I thought was really interesting. They were kind of like embodying this hyper-femininity and using it to do like gender performance.
Like as a way of trolling men, basically.
So like play into those expectations that those trolls already have, I think. I mean, you're right. Like it feels very feminist, and it also feels very left-wing. A lot of the politics that they're saying, that they're talking about, and a lot of the views that they have, whether it's on the relationships between men and women or like on the relationships between, like, as you say, capitalism, if they're exploring capitalism, like they're all fairly left-wing ideas. So a very capitalistic figure, when you first look at it, it's, you know, like logomania and glitter and highlights, but it's someone who's adopting that costume to say things that are anti-capitalistic and left-wing and feminist, which I think is interesting.
As well, Rasheen says Bimboism 2.0 is also more intersectional than the original, which admittedly did set a pretty low bar.
In the past, the parameters of it were smaller, so it was like very thin, blonde, white, and now a lot of like these modern day bimbos, it's more intersectional, and there was a lot of different body types, there was a lot of ethnicities that were kind of adopting this aesthetic without feeling like they've been excluded from it.
Worth mentioning here that Bimbo Talk is much queerer than its blueprint too. You can see that in representation, and there's also plenty of explicit overlap with drag culture.
Sugar and Spice here, reporting to you live from the middle of suburbia. And we're about to do what we do best, which is scare the soccer moms, look hot, and get the girlies mad. Oh wait, let me put this in drive. Here we go.
But it was inevitable that once Bimbo Talk reached a certain level of prominence, it would attract criticism, especially from older feminists.
It feels subversive to these people who are posting online because they're reclaiming a figure that was a misogynistic trope. And so I understand that. But I don't know, it's convenient that the misogynistic trope that they are reclaiming is like a very beautiful woman who like still appeals to what we know of as like I don't think it would be considered very radical to dress like this and say these things if you really, really extricated yourself from what's going on. So I get that, and I get that the critiques of this are that adopting a name like Bimbo, it's a diminutive. I think what we tend to forget, because we're on the internet all the time, or like I'm on the internet all the time, not just for work, just because there's something wrong with me. Like it has like this flattening effect, and we assume that everyone is engaging with the internet on the same level. But like a lot of these girls are like 15, 16, 17. This is their first exposure to feminism. They've spent a lot of their time, particularly as coming out of the pandemic, is like alone in their house. So they're learning these ideas and they're being exposed to these ideas through things like TikTok, which is by its very nature like so quick and so flattened. Like there's no nuance to it, there's no depth, and like that's why things get lost. You would hope that this is a gateway point for people, which I think a lot of these videos were, because they were using this image to say things that you wouldn't associate with the image, and that can be a gateway point to engaging more deeply with the ideas that they're talking about. So I think that's the sympathy that I have. It's like, yeah, of course this is not going to change the structural issues that oppress women all over the world, but if it's a way to introduce younger women to these ideas, then surely that can only be a good thing.
And you don't have to scroll for long to see some of that generational warfare name-checked under Bimbo hashtags.
I see these Instagram bimbos and these Twitter bimbos coming for me in their little millennial cult, and there's no reason to tell someone they don't understand what it's like to be a bimbo or a woman, because I am one, bitch.
So the hostility is very much a two-way street in some places. But in spite of all the criticism, or maybe aided by it, the bimbo trend is undeniable. And it's visible in plenty of places other than TikTok. You have the Y2K look taking over in fashion, which is both fueling the aesthetic bimbo trend and arguably being fueled by it. Meanwhile, in the media, there's been a major moral reevaluation of bimbo icons, starting with Paris Hilton.
Well, this entire time I have been playing a character, so the world has never really truly known who I am. And I'm not a dumb blonde. I'm just really good at pretending to be one.
Who could forget the Free Britney movement?
What do we want? Free Britney! When do we want it? Now!
And more recently, a Pamela Anderson doco.
To say I was a real person the entire time.
The entire time, yes.
And just a general renaissance for celebrities like Dolly Parton, Marilyn Monroe, and dare I say, Anna Nicole Smith.
When people talk to me, I'm sure they think bimbo, but when they talk to me, I'm a very smart person, and I think that they understand that.
So simultaneously, the bimbo aesthetic is everywhere. You have young feminists on social media trying to reclaim the word with some success, and all this heightened awareness in the mainstream that, hey, maybe we shouldn't have spent all those decades insisting that women look hot and then character assassinating them when they did that. But the real sign that a trend has made a dent in the world is if you can see it in your immediate personal networks. So I started to make a list of all the bimbos, in the modern sense of the word, in my life. And right at the top was a comedian named Eloise Eftos, who I know from the Sydney stand-up scene.
As you can tell, I'm an accountant. I'm just kidding. Fuck that. Can you imagine if I was an accountant? What a waste. I'm way too hot to be an accountant. Thank you. No, I'm actually an actress and a hot comedian. Don't know if you guys know this, but actress is actually the Latin word for insecure waitress. Someone told me that the other day and I was like, oh, but, being a waitress isn't too bad. It's kind of like stand-up, you get to talk to people that you'd never talk to in real life. Like I would never talk to you, do you know what I mean?
Hi, I'm Eloise Eftos. I am an actor and Australia's first attractive comedian, plus many other things: dancer, singer, voiceover artist, 80s aerobic instructor, flight attendant. The list goes on. And I'm very excited to be here on Angela's podcast.
All right, that's great. So I don't know that there's like an easier way to ask the question that I'm about to ask you. So I'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
Would you self-describe as a bimbo?
It's so funny when you say that, because I go, I don't know if I do, because it has such negative connotations from like when we grew up. But then also I think my stand-up persona is slightly a bimbo, but like the new age bimbo, where it's sort of like, I would like to think that bimbo's been like re-owned. It's kind of like me re-owning like the word wog as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like we've sort of come so far. So I don't know if I would self-describe myself as that, but if anyone called me that, I'd be like, thanks. You know what I mean? Almost like, thanks so much for the compliment.
People might wonder why I chose you to talk about this. They can't see your T-shirt right now, which says,
"This is what perfect looks like."
True.
One of the many slogan teas I bought at Paddy's Markets is the best.
Perfect. The reason I wanted to speak to you specifically is this is very much a part of your comedy in some ways.
I think my onstage persona, it kind of started out, she was a bit more of a bimbo, if you want to say. But basically the idea behind it was like, she was a hot girl doing comedy, that she's like too good at comedy, but like she's hot, and almost the idea of like, I'm actually really good at this, but people don't want me to be good at it because of how I look, or almost like the popular girl in high school who's like, I'm just going to try that, and she ends up being really good. I just started writing in this character of like a woman that knows that she's attractive.
Everyone always goes on about how expensive the movies is. It's like, how expensive can it be? Like, how much is a big bucket of popcorn? What, $80? I don't know. I've never had to pay for one myself. Because I'm hot.
So you must have had a full range of responses, right? Like you've gigged a lot.
Yeah.
So like in 6 years of continuous performing, can you talk us through some of the more extreme reactions you've had?
I've had like people call me like a slag while I've been on stage. I've had a lot of male hecklers, almost like fake laughing, which is like a very classic heckle of like, I don't like your jokes, I'm going to laugh like in a sarcastic way, which is so
mean.
patronizing. And it's funny because it's like I'm being technically mean, but it's like, it's a joke. Like, I honestly, I could probably go harder. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think I'm that controversial with my comedy, but it's funny how especially men will be extremely fragile about it, but especially even women too, and it's wild. I'll go out on stage, and I've spoken about it before, I can see the reactions of women in the crowd, like almost like putting their hands on like their partner's legs, or almost like snickering, or like looking at me like in a like fuck you kind of way. It's really funny. It's hilarious because also for my comedy, I like to think it's very like feminist. And I hope that women in the crowd, as the set goes on, and it's happened, I can see them switch. Sometimes they won't, but that's unfortunately the way the world is. I guess we live in a pretty patriarchal society. I don't know, even just like talking about how people can see my nipples on stage and stuff, like that for me was like a big thing. I could see people reacting. I could hear the crowd reacting or saying things about seeing my nipples through my shirt.
What is that like? Like,
yeah.
That stuff, but like the nasty responses, like I feel a bit sick in my stomach when you talk about like the men, like loud, sarcastic, fake laughing.
Yeah.
Like I think that is maybe one of the nastiest heckles because there's kind of no rebuttal.
Yeah, totally.
To that. It's really kind of insidious. And look, yeah, you go on stage, heckling happens.
Totally.
But how does that feel?
It feels shit, like, to be honest. It's not great. It's sort of like the hardest part about, I guess, my style is that it's like I already have to be on the defense. Like I already have to be like ready for the pushback, because I also don't know if the crowd's going to get it. I almost feel like, oh, should I smile a bit more? Should I do this a bit more? Being called like names and stuff is one thing. And I feel like I always have little rebuttals. Like a classic one I always say is like, I'm sorry, I don't speak white trash. What was that? Like,
Sure.
Thank you. You're a bit too old for me, but I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Oh, guys. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, is your friend okay? I'm so sorry, sir, but like, why are men so sensitive? It's so weird.
You were saying that you still do it, and it's still kind of like the core of your character on stage, but you're doing less of it now.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's like, is there any part of you that just got tired of copying that shit and went, okay.
Yeah. You know what? That's a good question, because I feel like there were definitely moments where it was kind of like, oh, people get so offended by, I don't know, like a woman being confident or like saying that she's attractive or whatever. So it was almost like, how many times can you say it in the set before like people get it or get that you're like having a laugh with them or
that would be exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why I'm almost like proud of myself that I've done it. And you know what makes it so rewarding is like meeting women after that get it, or especially like the queer community that get it. And their response is so rewarding, because I'm not doing it for straight men. I'm doing it for, or even when the straight men come up and they go, I never thought women were funny before until I saw you. It's like, that's not a compliment. Like that's
Shut up,
literally
go
the
away.
opposite of what I want to hear. I know that there's people that don't get it the way that it's intended. A lot of people like, I know a girl that's just like that. And I'm like, you're missing the point. I'm making fun of how you see women. I'm not making fun of women. I'm making fun of how you see me.
Like you say, not everyone does get the joke.
Yeah.
And so there is this kind of, and I don't want to overstate it, but there is a very real potential for harm where you inadvertently potentially end up perpetuating the stereotypes rather than breaking them down.
Yeah, totally.
Which is what you're looking to do. You're looking to subvert it.
Totally.
But, if you miss the mark, the stakes are quite high in a way, because people might walk away going like, lol, yeah, women are dumb bitches.
Yeah, right. That's what I think is so difficult. Even when you said, like, would you identify yourself as a bimbo? It's like, oh, like that's even, it makes you feel a little bit like, do I want to? Like, I don't know. I think that there's like so much more to be said about how women see other women, how the world sees women. And I know that some people won't get that. And I kind of like that they don't get it, because it's like, oh, well, that's not my job to make people get it. And I think it's funny because I think there's a lot more comedy out there that's doing more harm than this.
We interviewed a great comedian for this episode named Eloise, who kind of like affects, I guess, a bimbo style character on stage. And I guess I was talking to her about the problem that you have when not everyone understands what you're doing. You don't have control over how people see your performance.
It's interesting that you phrase it in that way, because I think when it comes to interacting with the world as a woman, that's true in any case, that you can't really control how people, for people in generally, but particularly for women, like you can't control how you're perceived, and you can't control how your performance of femininity will land. It's like you don't have to be on a stage in a pink outfit to feel that. I understand what you're saying, and like the joke can go over people's head somehow, and that maybe it feels dangerous in that respect. But if it makes her feel more powerful in her performance, and also if it allows her to have a gap between the person she is when she performs and the person that she is herself, then I guess surely that's a good thing, and maybe just draws attention to how much of our appearance and our personality are just performances for men anyway, which is a depressing thought.
For what it's worth, on the bleeding edge of TikTok subcultures, bimboism is almost passé at this point. Elsewhere in the world, where time moves at regular speeds, the trend is still playing out and will be for a while. But on the fastest moving parts of social media, entire civilizations have come and gone since then. I mean, we've had femcels, short for female incels, a feminist-adjacent movement which started as women claiming that no men they actually liked would have sex with them, before it morphed into a kind of cult of aestheticized toxic sadness, to quote Rasheen. Think Lana Del Rey, celebrating your various addictions, your depression, your eating disorder, lionizing broken female protagonists, like the women in Otessa Moshfegh's novels. Way darker than bimboism. But what they do have in common is this dropout mentality, which we see again in even newer internet subcultures that are still emerging.
Last week I wrote about this new thing, like girl failure.
And just to make it 1,000% clear, what Rasheen is saying there is girl failure. But during the recording, I got so confused that she was forced to spell out the word.
Oh, it's my accent. It's girl failure, like Failure. It's my accent.
Oh, failure. Girl failure. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Painfully meta. But anyway, girl failure.
Which is supposed to be the new backlash to the girl boss, which is just women who like suck, basically. And it's what women want to be online. You don't want to have to do anything. You don't want to have to work really hard. You don't want to have to look a certain way. You just want to have the same ability as men to just be some guy, basically, to just be normal. And so I thought this was a really interesting concept, and I wrote about it. And again, like a lot of the comments were like, well, this is just misogyny. Like, this is just putting women in a box.
Which is not that different from the battle lines of the bimbo debate. It's a backlash movement fighting for the freedom to drop out, the freedom to say, screw your perfectionism and screw the unwinnable game that women are forced to play. And that's what I meant at the start of this episode when I said that the bimbo trend was a cultural Rorschach test that helps separate old and new internet culture. Not to say that the future is bimbo. Far from it. In fact, bimboism already feels like it's done most of the work it came here to do. But at the risk of going too red string and corkboard on this, it does feel like part of a larger pattern. Gen Z women seem to have this impulse to validate a much longer list of acceptable ways to perform your gender. Being hyper-fem, or incredibly sad, or smooth-brained, or disastrously chaotic. And ultimately, that means less policing of the right and wrong way to be a woman. Is it all A+ feminism? Absolutely not. But right now, having just survived the girl boss era, I for one welcome our new dropout overlords. After all, we have them to thank for quiet quitting. Speaking of which... Thank you so much for listening to episode 1 of the new season of Schmeitgeist. Our second ep is an attempt to get to the bottom of the controversial claim that Catholicism is somehow cool right now and find out why it might be cropping up at the heights of fashion and pop culture more generally. Where does the irony stop and the real thing start? That's next week, so make sure you subscribe on the ABC Listen app, and then you don't have to think about it again. You can stay smooth-brained. Schmeitgeist is made by me, Ange Lavoie-Pierre, as well as our excellent sound designer and producer, Grant Walter, for ABC Everyday. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Subscribe to listen to more free podcasts or download the ABC Listen app and stream ad-free.